And we're live. Hey everyone, Josh Perry here, and welcome back to another episode of the Change Makers series. This is a series I've dedicated to creating more personal awareness to help you consciously design your ideal life by optimizing your health and your performance. And performance meaning just every aspect of your life. Performance, something I think a lot of people get confused as we think physical performance, exercise, sports, some kind of work or things like that. But performance is really just how you show up, how your brain works, how you show up in your everyday life, and if you're being your true self or not. Performance is more than just physical. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's energetic, it's mental. So I want to welcome you guys to today's live that is talking about setting and achieving goals. And a little backstory around today's episode. I've been pondering how I wanted to run this, and I just got done reading a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, as recommended to me by my coach, and I devoured it and I loved it, and it has everything to do with today's topic of setting and achieving goals. And the main takeaway I got from that book is having an intention beyond just the outcome. We're going to dive into a lot of what I learned from that book and how it applies to setting and achieving goals and how I've seen it work in my life and how I see it continue working today. But one of the main things that I took from it was becoming the person that does whatever it is that you want, that has whatever it is that you want, not waiting for that event to change how you feel, how you think, how you operate, but changing from the inside out. And that's one of the steps we're going to talk about today. But before I begin, I want to begin with defining the word goal by the definition that I looked up. And it's defined by the object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. So to me, a goal is just a target that we're aiming towards. And once we set our sights on that target, we can reverse engineer the path back to where we are now, and we'll see what it is we have to do, what it is we have to learn, what it is we have to get rid of, all the above, just everything it takes to reach that goal. And my goal today with sharing this is to share what I've learned along the way, what I've applied, what's worked well, and do my best to give the context around that so that way you can apply this to your life and achieve whatever it is that you're going after with the intention of optimizing your choices every day. And so on the other note of Atomic Habits, the book that I just finished reading, and I'm probably going to read it again actually here soon, I mentioned he talks a lot about changing from inside out. And for me, something I've been working on in the last few months, for those that have been following the podcast or just my content in general, I've been taking a deep dive into who I am and who is Josh Perry and all the things that makes me me and how I operate, and creating a lot of change from the inside out and allowing that to transcend into my physical world, if you will, the actions I take, the experiences I have, the things I do, the things I see. And it's become really profound to me, and I can't help but share the importance of not waiting for something in your life to affect how you feel and how you think and how you act, but reversing that. Rather than cause and effect, let's cause and effect in our life. Let's become the version we're trying to work towards, so that way we speed up time to where we have that reality. So the first thing I want to talk about when we're setting and achieving our goals is understanding the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is really important. A lot of people know it because it's associated with drive, motivation, cravings, and desire. But it's really important to understand that dopamine is released via pleasure, so accomplishing something, that moment, but it's also released in higher amounts with the anticipation of that reward, of that result that we had pleasure from before. So learning how dopamine works, you can manipulate your environment and the things you do to work for you to create what we all want, and we all refer to as motivation. It's just that feeling of drive towards something we want because we're anticipating the reward. So we actually have more dopamine release from the anticipation after we've thought about it, we've experienced something similar, and then we think about it in our mind and it creates that same effect. So something to think about that. And how when we create these habits, we create these dopamine feedback loops. So the more we do something that feels good in the moment, the more dopamine is released, the more of the unconscious association that the brain takes over and applies to whatever that thing is. And so, over time, all of a sudden we're doing this thing that feels good, we're getting that reward to the brain, and that just creates more of a habit and more of that cycle. And this could work for us or against us. So an example of against us You get home from work, you're stressed, you sit on the couch, you turn Netflix on, you order fast food or takeout, you get a pint of ice cream, whatever it is, and you feel good in that moment because you're avoiding the stress in your life. You're avoiding doing the things you know you should do because your brain associates those actions with that reward in the moment. But then after, you probably don't feel the greatest, or the next day. So something that we can flip it to work in our favor is the first time may be difficult, but let's say it's not doing that, or it's getting home from work and putting on your gym clothes and going and just getting like a 15-minute workout or just something, just move your body. Every time you accomplish something you set out to do, whether it's small or big, you get that dopamine hit, and then your brain starts associating that action with that feedback in terms of dopamine, and you feel good, and it starts building up this drive to do it more because you're building the anticipation. And the more you continue and the more you progress with these actions, the more that habit just solidifies and that loop just continues. But it can go against us or it can go for us. It depends on the level of consciousness. So like I said, I broke up this live today into 2 sections, setting and achieving goals. And that's pretty obvious of why, but I think it's really important to distinguish the 2 of them separately because they have different things that apply to it and different things that can help us. And so the first part of setting a goal, we have 3 parts to that. We have set our sights on a target, which is the goal, inspired action or purpose is what I call it, or being purposeful. And the third one, defining the goal. So when we're setting our sights on a target, that's the outcome that we want. That's the goal that we're going after. So first think what do I want? And if you can't answer that question quickly or after a few seconds, few minutes, think about everything you're experiencing right now that you don't want to. What you're lacking, what you're feeling that you don't want to feel, what you're seeing or not seeing. Start there. And then so you can put this into a simple question. Are you wanting to run away from pain, or are you going towards pleasure? So when you think about your goal, it could be, very common one that's easily understood. I'm overweight, okay? My goal is to remove X amount of pounds. So that would mean, you're running from pain. And then you start building this new reframe of running towards pleasure. And that's just a good way to start, is setting your sights on the target and asking yourself, am I running from pain or am I running towards pleasure? And that helps set you up for the next one, is the inspired action piece. And that's really asking yourself, why do I want this? For what purpose do I want this goal? For what purpose do I want whatever it is that I want? And the other question you can ask yourself in that moment is, how will this impact my life? How will this result that I'm going towards impact my life positively? How will it change my life when I achieve this thing? Emotionally, financially, spiritually, creatively, creatively. Things like that. How is it going to impact every aspect of your being that makes you you? And then another question you can ask yourself is, how will I feel, look, or think when I reach whatever it is I'm going after? How am I going to be different? How am I going to be different in every aspect of the way I look, the way I feel, the way I think, the way I do things? What do I hear differently? Anything you can ask yourself to get more clear on what it is that you want. And then again, ask yourself, how is that going to impact my life? How are these changes that are going to occur going to impact my life in valuable ways? And the third question you can ask yourself is, what happens if I don't reach my goal? So this is where a lot of the purpose comes into, feeling our goals emotionally. We start with, what do we want and how's it gonna make us feel? But then we flip it and we ask, what happens if I don't reach my goal? Am I willing to accept that? And that for me has helped me just drive me more towards what I want, because I don't want to accept not reaching my goal. I don't want to accept, not making the changes I need to make because of the route I see myself going. If I'm in this spot where I need to make a change, I feel I need to make a change now, then I don't want to not make the change, because I know how it's just going to snowball and get worse and worse. So that's a good place to start. And then, you can think about, who's this going to affect negatively or positively in your life if you reach it or if you don't. So that's always a good one that adds a little bit more value in terms of defining the goal, which we're going to talk about here in a second, is, how is you reaching your goal going to affect more than just yourself, but the people that you love, the people that you work with, the people that you see or may not even know, because everything has a ripple effect. All the encounters and experiences we have, it changes other people's lives in various different ways. So you can think about, how is reaching your goal going to impact people positively, and how is not going to reach people or not reach your goal going to affect people negatively, And so the third piece we get into is defining the goal. And that's where we need to talk about, how can we measure our success? So along the route of achieving our goal, which we're going to get into just here in a second, the first place we need to start is defining it. And that's, how can we measure this? Do we have a baseline starting point? And with body weight or with finances, it's easy because there's numbers. So it's a little bit easier as an example. But if you're wanting to make $100 a day and you're at $50 a day, well, now you know where you are, so you can help define your goal. Well, I want to make $50 more a day. It's just an easier way of using it as an example of the numbers. But just think about whatever it is that you're wanting to go after, and like, where are you starting from now? Maybe it's emotionally. Maybe you're feeling unmotivated. You're not feeling driven anymore. You're feeling negatively. You're feeling fear and anxiety. So how can you measure success? Feeling less of those, feeling the opposite of those, feeling empowered, feeling inspired, feeling energetic, feeling just driven and motivated. Those are good ways to measure it. And the second piece of this is, really think about, if you were to have an open conversation with yourself, removing fear, limiting beliefs, and judgment from the equation, really think about, is this goal something that you feel is realistic and attaining? And 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to think to yourself right away, no, it's not. But if you think beyond that, you get rid of the fear, you get rid of that veil that's trying to protect you, and you ask yourself, is this realistic? Like, can someone do this? Not just me in this moment, can someone do this? And that's what's helped me along my route and my journey, is to think, like, have others that look like me or that talk like me or that come from where I've come from done something like this. And because that gives me that belief in myself that, oh, I saw someone else do it, so I can do it. And then that gives you a better understanding of, like, is this something I can do on my own, or do I need support from other people? Do I need more tools? Do I need more resources? Do I need more education? Do I need more support? Things like that. And the third piece of defining a goal is asking yourself, when do I want to accomplish this? And is that time frame realistic? And again, numbers are just super easy for this example. So financially, if your goal is to make, let's say $100,000 a quarter, and you're making $20,000 a quarter, and you want to make this $100,000 a quarter in, let's say, 6 months, you got to weigh out, like, where are you starting from? So get that baseline, and it's like, is that realistic? If I'm making $25,000 a quarter right now, and I want to quadruple that, can I do that? And, like, there's no right or wrong to it. It's just, you want to have a really good self-aware understanding. And this is where that support comes in. This is where asking other people advice and other people's perspective can help play a role in this, and allowing you, maybe you're starting out, a lot of people do this, I want to lose 100 pounds in a year. Well, let's see, like, maybe let's set a smaller goal with the intention of that 100 pounds. Because if we say, I want to lose 50 pounds in a year, when our intention is to lose 100, when we draw back to the dopamine response and we're hitting all these markers, we're reaching all these milestones, we're developing that feedback loop of dopamine, and we're feeling good about ourselves, it's going to create that momentum and allow us to feel more motivated and driven. But if we set our sights too high and we don't hit our goals because they're too big, because we got a little too ambitious, it could go negatively, and then over time you start developing the story of how you're a failure and how you can't succeed, and you might as well just stop because you're not reaching your goal. So it's just really good to have people in your network, just be selective of that. That's where it gets tricky with mindset, because if people are doubting themselves and you're asking for information of them, that's why I look up to virtual mentors. I've had a great support system in my immediate network, but a lot of what I want to do in my life and what I wanted to do in the past, my family and friends didn't do that. So I had to look out to other people that did. I call them virtual mentors, and I just see the belief in myself through them. And then the next piece to this whole equation is the second section of achieving the goal. So now that we are really clear on what it is we're going after, we have our sights set on this target, and we understand the purpose of that target, that goal, why we want that goal, who it's going to affect beyond just ourselves and our lives, and we've defined it. We're very specific about it. We're able to measure it. We're able to see if it's realistic and attaining, and we're able to track our habits with that goal. We can move into achieving it. And the first piece that I think is really important to understand, from my perspective, what I've experienced, is understanding the emotional cycle of change and delayed gratification. If you can understand delaying gratification to later on in this moment, you can get out of the feedback, or like the habit loop of immediate response, immediate reward, because you're working towards something bigger. It's so easy to sit on the couch instead of going to the gym, to drink that bottle of wine rather than drinking water, sleeping in rather than getting up earlier, reading a little bit more rather than watching TV. Like, it's so easy to do one or the other. But it just depends on what you're working toward, because if you're doing something that feels good now, but it's not helping you get to where you want to go in your life, not make a change in your life, that pain that comes after, that guilt, that shame, that frustration, that anger is going to continue and get worse and worse, build and build. So when you can understand that you're working towards something bigger, and that's where defining your goal and the purpose behind the goal really comes in, is you're working towards something greater than the current moment. You're defined by a vision. You're not defined by a moment of immediate gratification. And so understanding the emotional cycle of change is really easy. There's 5 steps. I'm not gonna go into it too in depth, but the first one is uninformed optimism. So this is when you have a new idea. You're just stoked. I'm gonna start this business. I'm gonna go after this goal. I'm gonna ask that person out. I'm gonna take this test. I'm gonna take that class. I'm gonna invest in this. Like, you're just uninformed, optimistic on something. And then your analytical mind comes in, and that brings us to step 2 of the emotional cycle of change, informed pessimism. So now you're understanding a little bit more about what it takes to achieve what you want. You learn that you've got to invest this time, invest these resources, learn this, do that, change. That's uncomfortable to the body because it's so used to where it is. So then you become kind of down. You start doubting yourself, and you got all of this negative feedback in your mind, and these beliefs and these limiting beliefs come up, and that's what we call informed pessimism. That brings us to the third part of the emotional cycle of change, the valley of despair. That's where people give up. This is where they started so stoked to start that business, to reach that goal, to do whatever it is that they wanted. They learned a little bit about the change they had to embrace to get to that point, and then they got down on themselves. They gave up. They landed in the valley of despair. So you look at it as a curve, informed optimism, and then you get up to this peak, and then you're like, oh no, I learned what it takes, and then you come down in the valley of despair. And that's usually where people give up until they go back and start over. But if you can move to the 4th piece, informed optimism, you learn what it takes. You push through because you've seen that it's been successful for other people. You see one step at a time. You're no longer looking at the entire mountain to climb. You're looking at the first step. There's a flight of stairs, there's 100 steps. We don't typically look at that and say, oh man, like I gotta walk up 100 steps. No, we just take one step at a time. And then by the time we know it, we're there. And that happens with goals. That happens with changing, especially as we get older. But the more experience we have, those associations to start building in the mind. So if we start looking at the whole thing, then we get discouraged because we're looking at this huge thing that we have to change and we haven't even started. So informed optimism is when you start looking at it one piece at a time. That quote, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I mean, I don't encourage anyone to go try and eat an elephant, but it's just one bite at a time. I hear that when it comes to writing books a lot. And the final piece of this is success and fulfillment. You push through that fear. You push through the valley of despair. You didn't give up. You learn more about what it's going to entail. You learn more about how you can apply what you've been learning. You can take one step at a time. And then you get to success. And I argue it doesn't stop there. But the more you feel fulfilled, the more you want to progress. We're humans. We're wired to progress. And that you can thank that to dopamine and other neurotransmitters that affect that equation. But just if you can understand the emotional cycle of change, you empower yourself because you know what's coming and you know how to react because you're informed. And then you can also delay gratification knowing you're working towards something larger than the immediate response. Now, the second piece of achieving a goal is changing from the inside out. And this is something that James Clear talks a lot about in Atomic Habits. And he talks about the 3 layers of behavior change. Outcomes, the results that we're working towards, the goal that we're working towards, like what it is we want, the processes, and identity. So outcomes are what you get, processes are what you do, and identity is who you become, what you believe about yourself. Most people start with outcomes. They're outcome driven. They're just focused on what they want. And that's why they don't have success in sustaining it or to reaching it, because the processes is the second most important piece. And then the identity is the single most important piece if you want to sustain reaching that goal or to get to that goal more efficiently and more enjoyably. And the reason why I said people fail at sustaining a goal or even reaching a goal when they're focused on the outcome is because they're missing the system, they're missing the habits, the decisions to be made on a daily basis. And that's because they don't have the identity of that person that they're trying to become. Maybe they don't believe in themselves, or they're not even thinking about it. But let's say you want to be a runner you don't just think like, oh, I need to go run a marathon. Like, no, you have to run every day. And I go over talking about this with, wanting to be a well-known speaker, a successful speaker. If I'm not speaking on a regular basis, I'm not working towards that goal. With BMX, I didn't just wait for a competition to call myself a BMX athlete. I rode my bike every day. That's what built up my success, because I was building these systems, I was building these routines, these habits. I was embedding the learnings and the skill every day to get to that contest, to succeed at the contest, to become a professional athlete. But it doesn't just happen. Like, you don't just change who you are when you have something. And that's what we talked about, cause and effect over, why don't you cause an effect in your life? Why don't you affect a cause in your life? Be empowered, create something, change who you are to be taking that action of the person you want to become. So if you want to be a writer, you don't just wait till your book's published. That doesn't make sense. You write a little bit every day. In sports, if the team and the coaches were just focused on the score and not what it takes to increase their score, then where are they going to go? They're probably going to get scored on the entire time trying to figure out how to score. So it's really important to focus on changing who you are internally, changing your belief structures, changing the paradigm in which you operate and the dialogue you have with yourself internally and externally, so that way you can create new processes. And that's another podcast I've done in the past, 5 steps to change. Or was it, 5, maybe it was 6 steps to change or overcome yourself. It's really becoming conscious of who you are and how you operate, so you can change it. You can change your environment, you can change the things you do. Now, the third piece of achieving goals to me that I've taken from my journey and what I've been learning is building systems that leads to your success. So that's the second piece of what I just talked about in the 3 layers of behavior change processes. They're what you do. And James has a really good quote in the Atomic Habits. Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So again, you can't just focus on the score. You got to focus on, the training, the drills, the practice, and the game. You got to focus on the process. And like I said before, a good way to figure out that process is reverse engineering where you want to go to where you are now, looking at people that have done it, learn from them, reach out for support, ask questions, share your truth, and just see what other people have to say and get feedback and try. Don't just be stuck in motion of planning. Take action, be in action, be constantly becoming more of the person you want to become, be constantly increasing that identity, that belief to do what you want, to have what you want, to feel and experience what you want in your life. Now, the fourth piece of achieving a goal from my perspective that I've taken from this journey is detach from the outcome and audit your habits again. Detach from the goal, detach from controlling the goal, from controlling the outcome, from controlling how long it's going to take. Just focus completely on your habits, the systems, the processes. Are you doing what it takes to create the outcome you want? If you're just so focused on winning the game and the score, but you're not focused on applying what it takes to increase that score, figuratively speaking, you're gonna probably not get any points. You're probably gonna be always wondering when you're gonna get there. But if you focus on changing your systems, your processes, and your identity, that's what it takes to get to your success. And another great quote I heard recently about this is, we don't decide our future, we decide our habits. Our habits decide our future. We can't control the things we want. We can control how we operate. We can control how we think, how we act, and how we feel on a regular basis. And that's going to lead a higher probability of our success. And something else that James talks about, and I'm just going to briefly go over it because I'm still trying to understand it more, but I thought it was profound just from my basic understanding. What he said is the 4 problems that manifest from focusing too much on a goal rather than systems. The first one is winners and losers have the same goal. It doesn't matter who does whatever, like everyone may have the similar goal, but it's the systems that the successful people build that leads them to that goal. We're all human beings, we all have different attributes, different skills and abilities, but if there's something we're trying to achieve and someone else did it, the only reason why that person did something that you're very capable of doing is because of the systems they had, the process, the habits, the choices, the awareness. That's the difference. The second problem is achieving a goal is only a momentary change. So again, back to the change from the inside out. If we don't change from the inside out, if we don't change who we are and our beliefs and our choices and our habits, moving up to systems, the outcome we want is only going to be for some time. Think about that. Anytime anyone's ever been on a diet and they stopped doing whatever led them to their success and then went back to their old ways, what happens? The results went away. And typically in that world, more came back because they didn't change their identity. They didn't become someone who makes healthier decisions, that makes choices that are going to help them reach their goal. They just did what it took to get to that moment and then just stopped off after that. The third piece is goals restrict happiness. So another quote James has here is, when you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. Again, cross out cause and effect, and cause and effect in your life. Affect a cause, understand how powerful we are and how powerful our mind is and the choices we make and how that manifests into our reality. Don't wait to be happy. Don't wait to be successful. Feel that now and make choices that are aligned with that to create a higher probability of achieving what you want in your life. And number 4, goals are at odds with long-term progress. Another great quote James has about this is, ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. Again, if you're focused on a goal and you're only doing what it takes to reach that goal, but you're not changing who you are and how you live your life, that goal can slip away or can never appear. And the 5th and final piece is accountability. How are you going to hold yourself accountable? Who in your life can play a role in that? Is it social media? Is it hiring a coach? Is it sharing with an accountability buddy? Is it donating, committing to donating $25 to either a charity of your liking or someone you don't like every time you don't do something that you want to do? How are you going to hold yourself accountable? So just to keep this short, I have so much more I want to talk about, but I have my group call coming up in a minute, and I also I want to just share this brief chat today about setting and achieving goals, the 3 steps to setting a goal and the 5 steps to achieving a goal from my perspective, from my experience, from what I've been learning and applying, and just see if it can help and if any questions come up from that. And all the questions that you guys had recently asked in the Changemakers Facebook group, I believe this outline that I just shared will contribute an answer to those questions, or at least spark a new frame of mind around those questions that you guys asked. And as always, my name is Josh Perry. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this. I appreciate those that are in the Changemakers Facebook group that are dedicated to changing who they are because they want to be the change they want to see in the world. And that's a big belief of mine. You got to walk your talk. You got to become what you want to see in your reality. You got to become the version that you're working towards. And it starts with you, starts with your choices every day, and starts with awareness. So again, I appreciate you guys, and I would love any feedback you guys have here. And I'll check you guys out in the next, I'll talk to you guys in the next live. I'd love to know what you guys want to talk about. I'll run another poll and see what you guys think, but let me know what you think about this and how you've set a goal, how you've achieved a goal, how you've seen these different aspects I've talked about come into play with your life. And if you've read Atomic Habits, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and I appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.